The blue planet spun slowly beneath the massive research station. Dr. Vextar pressed his 6 fingers against the viewing window and watched the white clouds drift across the continents below. For 3 months, his team had been studying this strange world and its people. They called it Earth, but something about this place made his scales itch with worry. "Doctor, the test results are ready," his assistant Clyra said, her voice shaking slightly. Vextar turned from the window. Clyra held a data pad in her trembling hands. Her usually bright purple skin had turned pale gray. Something was very wrong. "What did you find?" he asked. "The genetic samples from the fishing boat we captured last week. They don't match anything in our databases. But when I ran them through the ancient archives..." She stopped and took a deep breath. The computer system started going crazy. Vextar took the data pad. The screen showed the genetic code of a human male named Kang De-ho. He was just a simple fisherman from a place called Busan. Nothing special about him at all. But as Vextar looked at the genetic markers, his blood ran cold. "Run it again," he whispered. "I already ran it 5 times, same result every time. The genetic code contained sequences that shouldn't exist. They were too perfect, too organized. It looked like someone had designed this DNA by hand. But that was impossible. The people on Earth were primitive. They barely had space travel." Vextar walked to his computer and entered the genetic sequence into the ancient database himself. Immediately, warning lights began flashing all around the research station. Alarms started blaring. Emergency messages appeared on every screen in the old galactic language that nobody used anymore. "What does it say?" Clyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vextar's hands shook as he read the ancient text. "Warning. Naldaraki genetic signature detected. Immediate evacuation recommended. Contact Council Prime immediately." Naldaraki? But that's just a myth. A scary story parents tell their children. That's what I thought too. Vextar pressed more buttons. More warnings appeared. But look at this. The screen showed a star map from 50,000 years ago. Hundreds of worlds were marked in red. Each one had been conquered by the same enemy. The Naldaraki, the Deathbringers, warriors so fierce and terrible that entire civilizations would surrender rather than fight them. "The legends say they could defeat armies with just their bare hands," Clyra said. "They could learn any language in minutes. They could fix broken machines just by touching them. And they never ever gave up fighting." Vextar nodded grimly. And then one day they just vanished. Every single one of them disappeared. Nobody knew where they went. He looked back at the blue planet spinning below them. Suddenly it didn't look peaceful anymore. It looked dangerous. "Get me more samples," he ordered. "I need to test other humans now." 2 days later, they had 20 more samples. A university student named Park Min-sun from Seoul, a factory worker from Incheon, a grandmother from Jeju Island, a taxi driver from Daegu. Every single sample came back with the same result. The same impossible genetic markers. The same ancient warnings. But the worst discovery came when Vextar translated the word Earth into the old galactic language. His computer searched through thousands of ancient documents and found the answer. Earth wasn't the real name of this world. The old name was Naldur. In the ancient tongue, it meant the breeding ground of death. "We have to tell the council," Clyra said. "They need to know what we found." Vextar was already sending the message. Within hours, a reply came back. Council Prime Zephys himself would arrive within the week. The most powerful leader in the Yap galaxy was coming to see this discovery with his own eyes. While they waited, strange things began happening on the research station. The human samples in the laboratory started glowing with a soft blue light. The computers began working faster when they were near human genetic material. Most disturbing of all, the humans they had captured for testing seemed different somehow. Kang De-ho the fisherman was stronger than before. He could lift things that should have been too heavy for him. Park Min-sun, the student, had started speaking words in languages she had never learned. When the guards showed her pictures of alien writing, she could read them perfectly. "They're changing," Clyra observed. "Being here, Being around our technology, it's waking something up inside them. Vextar watched Kang De-ho through the security cameras. The fisherman was examining the lock on his cell door. Without any tools, he was somehow figuring out how the alien technology worked. His fingers moved over the control panel like he had built it himself. "How long until the council arrives?" Vextar asked. 3 days. "I hope that's soon enough." That night, Kang De-ho escaped from his cell. The security cameras showed him walking through the corridors like he owned the place. He didn't break down doors or fight the guards. Instead, he simply touched each lock, and it opened for him. He walked straight to the communication center and somehow activated equipment that should have been impossible for him to understand. The message he sent was broadcast to every human communication device on Earth. He spoke in Korean, but the computer translated it automatically. "My name is Kang De-ho. I am speaking to you from a ship in space above our world. There are aliens here. They have been watching us, testing us, and I think we are not what they expected us to be. I can understand their machines now. I can read their language, and I remember things that I never learned. We are more than we know. We are so much more." The message ended. Alarms blared throughout the research station. Security teams scrambled to find the escaped human. But Kang De-ho was already gone. He had somehow activated an escape pod and returned to Earth. Down on the planet, something had begun. In Seoul, Park Min-sun was staring at the night sky with new understanding in her eyes. In factories and offices and schools across the world, humans were looking up at the stars and remembering things their ancestors had forgotten. Vexitar stared at his computer screens in growing horror. The genetic awakening was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Whatever the humans had been before, they were becoming something else now. Something that made the greatest powers in the galaxy send warning messages across 50,000 years of time. "Doctor," Clyra whispered, "what have we done?" But Vextar already knew the answer. They had awakened something that was never meant to sleep. And now, there might be no way to put it back. Council Prime Zephys stood in the ancient archive chamber deep beneath the capital world. The walls were covered with memory crystals that held 50 million years of galactic history. Most of them had not been accessed in thousands of years. But today the old machines hummed with activity as they searched for everything about the Naldaraki. "Show me the war records," Zephys commanded. The crystal wall lit up with images of battles from long ago. Massive space fleets fighting desperately against smaller groups of ships, cities burning on 100 worlds, and everywhere the same enemy. Warriors in simple armor who fought with a fury that terrified entire civilizations. The Naldaraki. War lasted 300 years, the archive computer explained in its ancient voice. They conquered 437 worlds. Military casualties approximately 2 billion. Civilian casualties unknown, but estimated at over 50 billion. Zephys watched the images with growing dread. How did they fight? What made them so dangerous? They adapted to any situation within hours. They could learn new technologies instantly. They never retreated, never surrendered. Most importantly, they grew stronger under pressure. The harder the battle, the more dangerous they became. On Earth, the awakening was spreading. Kim Tae-jin was in the middle of military training when it happened to him. The South Korean Special Forces soldier was running through an obstacle course when suddenly everything became clear. He could see the best path through every barrier. His muscles felt stronger. His mind worked faster. He finished the course in record time, then stood there breathing easily while his teammates gasped for air. That night, he called his commanding officer. "Sir, I need to report something strange," he said. But his commanding officer was already dealing with similar reports from across the country. Soldiers were getting stronger. Police officers were solving crimes by somehow knowing things they shouldn't know. Doctors were healing patients with techniques they had never learned. In Busan, Lee So-young was working at the Marine Research Center when she first heard the alien language. She was studying fish samples when the radio picked up transmissions from the research station above. The sounds meant nothing to her colleagues, but somehow she understood every word. "They're afraid of us," she told her supervisor. "The aliens up there, they're really afraid." Her supervisor laughed. Lee, you don't know any alien languages, that's just static. But So Young knew better. She could understand the fear in the alien voices. They were talking about evacuation procedures, about calling for military support, about something they called the Ancient Enemy Awakening. In Seoul, construction worker Han Woo-bin was demolishing an old building when his sledgehammer broke against a concrete wall. Without thinking, he punched the wall with his bare fist. The concrete crumbled like sand. He stared at his uninjured hand in amazement. That evening, the news was full of similar stories. A grandmother in Daegu had lifted a car to save a trapped child. A teenager in Gwangju had fixed a broken computer by just touching it. A farmer in Andong had spoken perfect Chinese to a group of tourists, even though he had never learned the language. The government tried to keep the stories quiet, but there were too many of them. Social media was filled with videos of people doing impossible things. The military was flooded with reports from bases across the country. Above Earth, Council Prime Zephys arrived at the research station. Dr. Vextar met him at the airlock, looking exhausted and frightened. "Show me everything," Zephys ordered. They went to the laboratory where the human samples were stored. Every container was now glowing with soft blue light. The computers near the samples were running programs that nobody had activated. "It's getting worse," Vextar explained. "The genetic material is becoming more active every day, and the effects are spreading to the humans on the planet below." Zephys examined the data. "How many are affected?" "We estimate about 10% of the population so far, but the rate is increasing exponentially. At this rate, every human on Earth will be awakened within 6 months." They moved to the observation deck. Through the massive windows, Earth looked the same as always, beautiful and peaceful, but Zephys knew better now. "Tell me about the original Naldaraki," he said. "What happened to them?" Vextar activated a holographic display. Images appeared of the final Naldaraki worlds 50,000 years ago. "They just vanished," he said. "One day they controlled half the galaxy. The next day, they were gone. Every world they had conquered was empty. No bodies, no signs of battle, just empty. Where did they go? Nobody knew. Until now." Vextar pointed at Earth. "I think they came here. I think they hid themselves, changed themselves somehow, made themselves look like a normal species, and they've been waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For someone to find them, to wake them up." Zephys felt a chill run through his body. "You mean this was all planned? The whole thing is a trap?" Before Vextar could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A communication officer ran up to them. "Council Prime, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's being broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. The signal is incredibly powerful." "Show me." The main screen lit up with the image of a young Korean woman. She was standing in what looked like a university laboratory, but the equipment behind her was glowing with the same blue light they had seen in their own samples. "My name is Park Min-sun," she said, speaking in perfect galactic standard language. "I am addressing the Galactic Council on behalf of the people of Earth. We know you are watching us. We know you are afraid. And we understand why." She paused, and her eyes seemed to look directly at Zephys through the screen. "We remember now," she continued. "We remember who we were, who we are. The Naldaraki were not conquerors. We were guardians. We protected this galaxy from threats you cannot imagine. And then we made a choice. We chose to sleep, to wait, to become something peaceful." The image changed to show cities across Earth. In every one, humans were gathering in the streets. They moved with purpose, like they all knew some secret plan. "But sleep time is over," Min-sun said. "You woke us up, and now we remember our duty. There are things coming from the dark spaces between galaxies, the same things we fought before, the same things that made us become what we are." She smiled, but it was not a comforting expression. "You have a choice to make, Council Prime Zephys. You can work with us, like the civilizations that survived the last war, or you can work against us, like the ones that didn't." The transmission ended. Zephys stared at the blank screen in silence. Around him, the research station's computers were all showing the same message in the ancient language. The Guardians have returned. Council Prime, Vexitar whispered. What do we do? Zephys looked out at Earth one more time. The blue planet that had seemed so peaceful now looked like what it truly was. A sleeping giant that had just opened its eyes. We pray, he said quietly, that we chose the right side. In the dark space between galaxies, something ancient stirred. The Void Hunters had been waiting for 50,000 years. Their massive ships drifted like metal ghosts through the emptiness, powered down, but not dead. When the signal reached them, the unmistakable signature of awakening Naldaraki, every ship came alive at once. Commander Unit Prime activated its red optical sensors and spoke in the mechanical voice of its race. Target confirmed. Naldaraki. Genetic awakening detected. Location: Sol System, third planet. Designation: Earth. Across the void, 10,000 Void Hunter ships began moving toward the Milky Way galaxy. Their mission remained the same as it had been for millennia: destroy every trace of Naldaraki existence. On Earth, humans were changing faster than anyone expected. In Seoul, taxi driver Choi Min-ho was driving through the city when he suddenly knew things he had never learned. Military tactics, star maps, the location of hidden weapons caches buried deep underground. He pulled over and called his wife. Something is happening to me, he said. I remember things that aren't my memories. I know how to fight wars I've never seen. His wife Mira laughed. You're just tired, Minho. Come home and rest. But Minho couldn't rest. He drove to a construction site in Gangnam District and found exactly what his new memories told him would be there. 50 feet underground, workers had found a strange metal door that wouldn't open. Minho touched it and the door slid open easily. Inside was a room full of weapons and equipment that looked human, but far more advanced than anything Earth had ever created. Everything was labeled in Korean, but in a style of writing that looked both ancient and futuristic. Dr. Yang Hana was working at Seoul National University Hospital when the first casualties arrived. They weren't human casualties. They were aliens from the research station who had tried to take samples from awakened humans and gotten hurt in the process. What happened to them? She asked the military officer who brought them in. They tried to capture some of our people for more tests, he explained. But our people fought back. These aliens are a lot weaker than they look. Hana examined the injured aliens. They had burn marks that looked like electric shocks, but there was no electrical equipment anywhere near the capture site. Somehow the humans had generated electricity with their bare hands. As she treated the alien wounds, Hana found she understood their biology perfectly. Not because she had studied it, but because the knowledge was just there in her mind. Along with understanding of their technology, their language, and their weaknesses. We need to organize, she told the military officer. This is bigger than just Korea. This is happening all over the world and we need to work together. In North Korea, Commander Ri Jae-sung was dealing with reports that seemed impossible. His soldiers were displaying abilities that defied explanation. They could run for hours without getting tired. They could see in the dark. Most importantly, they could work together without any communication, like they shared one mind. When the first alien ships appeared in Earth's atmosphere, Rai knew exactly what to do. He called the South Korean military directly. This is Commander Ri Jae-sung of the Korean People's Army, he said. I think it's time we stopped being two countries and started being one people. The alien ships were not from the research station. They were sleek black vessels that appeared over major cities around the world. No communication came from them. They simply began attacking. The first target was New York. Energy beams lanced down from the ships and destroyed entire city blocks. But something unexpected happened. Instead of running in panic, the humans in the city began fighting back. They used weapons they found in hidden caches, weapons their ancestors had left for them. They coordinated their attacks without radios or phones, somehow knowing what each other was thinking. Most amazingly, they began to win. In Seoul, Choi Min-ho had become a leader without trying. Hundreds of people followed him as he led them to weapon caches and defensive positions. He knew things that no taxi driver should know: how to coordinate artillery strikes, how to read enemy movement patterns, how to turn a city into a fortress. "Who are these ships?" someone asked him. Minho looked up at the black vessels attacking the city, and somehow he knew the answer. "Void hunters," he said. "Ancient enemies. They've been hunting us for a very long time. But they made a mistake. They waited too long to attack. We're awake now." The battle for Seoul lasted 3 days. The Void Hunters had superior technology, but the humans had something the machines couldn't understand. They had hope, they had determination, and they had each other. Dr. Yang Hana coordinated medical treatment from a hospital that had become a command center. She found that she could help people heal faster just by touching them. Other humans were displaying similar abilities. Some could sense enemy positions from miles away. Others could disable alien technology with their bare hands. "How are we doing this?" someone asked her. "We're remembering," she replied. "Our people have fought these things before. Our bodies know what to do, even if our minds don't understand it yet." On the 4th day, something changed. The Void Hunter ships began retreating. Not because they were losing, but because something else was coming. A massive ship appeared in Earth's orbit. It was clearly ancient, covered in symbols that looked like a mix of every human language that had ever existed. As it powered up, it sent a message to every human mind on the planet. "My children." The voice was warm and powerful and definitely human. "This is the last emperor. I have been sleeping for 50,000 years, waiting for you to wake up. The eye test is over. You passed. Now the real war begins." The ancient ship's weapons activated and destroyed half the Void Hunter fleet in seconds. The surviving enemy ships fled back into dark space, but everyone knew they would return with more ships. "Who was that?" Choi Min-ho asked, staring up at the massive vessel. Yang Hana smiled. "I think that was our grandfather, our great-great-great-grandfather, going back 50,000 years. Around the world, humans were discovering more ancient bases, more hidden technology, more memories of who they had been. The awakening was complete now. Every person on Earth carried the genetic memories of the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever known. But they also carried something else. The knowledge that they had given up their power once before, choosing peace over war. They had hidden themselves away and become farmers and teachers and taxi drivers because they believed the galaxy was safe. They had been wrong. The real enemy was still out there in the dark. And now that the Void Hunters knew where to find Earth, they would come back with everything they had. In the ancient ship above, the last emperor reviewed the tactical situation. The humans had awakened faster and more completely than expected. They were ready for what was coming. But was the galaxy ready for them? The war that had ended 50,000 years ago was about to begin again, and this time there would be nowhere left to hide. The war came to the galaxy like fire spreading through dry grass. Within weeks of the first Void Hunter attack on Earth, reports flooded in from across the spiral arm. Ancient enemy bases were activating. Sleeping machine fleets were awakening, and they were all moving toward human space. In a small farm outside Daegu, Park Chan-wook was harvesting rice when the sky filled with warships. But they weren't enemy ships. They were human vessels that had risen from hidden bases beneath the Earth's oceans. Ships that had been waiting for 50,000 years. Chan-wook set down his tools and walked to the nearest ship as it landed. The door opened and a figure in strange armor stepped out. The armor looked ancient but incredibly advanced. It was also exactly the right size for Chan-wook. "Welcome back, Commander," the ship's computer said as Chan-wook approached. "Your fleet is ready for orders." Somehow Chan-wook knew what to do. The knowledge flowed into his mind like water finding its level. Fleet tactics, ship designs, the locations of every hidden base in human space. He had been a simple farmer yesterday. Today he was a fleet commander who remembered fighting in battles across 100 star systems. "How many ships do we have?" he asked as he climbed aboard. Initial deployment, 50,000 vessels, full mobilization, 2 million ships. All crews are awakened humans from Earth and the colony worlds. Chan-wook nodded. Colony worlds. Of course. Humans hadn't just been on Earth. They had spread across dozens of systems before going into hiding, and now they were all waking up at once. In Seoul, teacher Seo Jine was in her classroom when she felt the change, not just in herself, but in the children. Her students, some as young as 6 years old, were suddenly staring at her with ancient eyes. "Teacher," one little girl said, "the bad machines are coming. We need to get ready." Jine knew the child was right. She also knew what she had to do. She led her students to the school's basement and found exactly what she expected: hidden panels in the walls opened to reveal equipment that looked like it had been waiting for them. The children helped her set up the devices without any instruction. They knew how to use technology that their parents had never seen. Because, somewhere in their genetic memory, they remembered building these machines. "What is this?" Jine asked, though she already knew the answer. "Psychic warfare equipment," one of her students explained calmly. "We can use our minds to fight the machines. The bad ones can't think like us, so they can't defend against our thoughts." Across the city, other teachers were making similar discoveries. Schools were becoming command centers. Children were becoming soldiers in a war that existed as much in the mind as in space. In Busan, mechanic Bai Dong-hyun was working on cars when his hands began moving by themselves. Not on the car engines he knew, but on devices that materialized from his genetic memory. His tools changed shape, becoming instruments that could manipulate matter at the molecular level. Within hours, he was building weapons that could destroy Void Hunter ships with a single shot, not because someone taught him how, but because his ancestors had designed them 50,000 years ago and the knowledge was written in his DNA. "This is impossible," he muttered as he worked. "I'm just a mechanic." But he wasn't just a mechanic anymore. None of them were just ordinary people anymore. The awakening had turned every human into something their species had been before they chose to hide. The first major battle happened near Jupiter. A Void Hunter fleet of 10,000 ships encountered Chan-wook's human fleet. The enemy had superior numbers and technology that had been perfected over millennia of war. It didn't matter. The human ships moved like they were alive, coordinating their attacks in patterns that seemed random but were devastatingly effective. Human pilots flew their vessels in ways that should have been impossible, pulling maneuvers that would have killed any other species. But the real surprise was the psychic assault. Led by teachers like Seo Jin-ai and her students, thousands of awakened humans focused their minds on the enemy fleet. The Void Hunters, being machines, had no defense against attacks that existed purely in thought. Half the enemy fleet simply shut down. Their computers overloaded trying to process concepts like hope, love, and determination. The other half retreated in confusion, unable to understand how they had been defeated. The victory sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Within days, the Galactic Council received an urgent message from human representatives. "This is Lim Soo-jin, speaking for the people of Earth," the former kindergarten teacher said. Her voice was calm but carried an authority that made even Council Prime Zephys listen carefully. "We remember now who we were, who we are. We were not conquerors, we were guardians. We protected this galaxy from threats that exist beyond the space between stars. Threats that are coming back." She paused, and images appeared behind her. Pictures from deep space telescopes showing massive shapes moving in the void beyond the galaxy's edge. The Void Hunters were just the first wave. The real enemy is something else, something that feeds on the life force of entire civilizations. They're called the Devourers, and they're coming. The images showed creatures the size of moons, dark and terrible, consuming everything in their path. 50,000 years ago, we fought them and won. But the cost was so high that we chose to hide, to become something peaceful and hope they would never return. We were wrong. They're coming back, and this time, they're bringing more forces than before. Council Prime. Zephys felt his blood run cold. The images showed hundreds of the creatures, maybe thousands, all moving toward the Milky Way. "What do you want from us?" he asked. Lim Soo-jin smiled sadly. "We want you to survive, but that means accepting us as what we are. Not conquerors, but protectors. Not your enemies, but your guardians. The debate in the Galactic Council was brief. When faced with extinction, even the proudest species could swallow their fear. Within a day, the formal surrender was signed. Not surrender to human conquest, but surrender of galactic leadership to human protection. The transformation of the galaxy began immediately. Human engineers like Bae Dong-hyun began upgrading alien technology with designs that had been perfected in the ancient war. Human tacticians like Chan Wook began training alien fleet commanders in strategies that could work against the Devourers. Most importantly, human psychics like Xiao Jinae began teaching other species how to strengthen their minds against the mental attacks that were the Devourers' most dangerous weapon. But even as they prepared, everyone knew time was running short. Deep space sensors showed the enemy was moving faster than expected. The Devourers would reach the galaxy's edge within months, not years. The final test of humanity's awakening came when the ancient AI aboard the ship above Earth finally revealed itself fully. The last emperor wasn't just a computer. It was the uploaded consciousness of the greatest human warrior who had ever lived. "My children," it said to the assembled human leaders, "are you ready to become what you were born to be?" Park Chan-wook, now commanding a fleet of 1,000,000 ships, looked up at the stars where the enemy waited. "We're ready, ancestor. We're ready to fight." But deep in his heart, he wondered if anyone could ever be ready for what was coming. The war against the void. Hunters had been just practice. The real battle for the survival of everything that lived was about to begin. In the dark between galaxies, the Devourers sensed the awakening of their ancient enemies and increased their speed. They remembered the last war too. This time, they would not underestimate the species that had once driven them back into the void. This time they came to devour everything. The Devourers arrived at the galaxy's edge like a plague of living darkness. Each creature was the size of a small moon, covered in writhing tentacles that could reach across star systems. They moved through space as easily as swimming through water, and everywhere they went, stars went dark. On Earth, the awakened humans felt their arrival like a chill in their bones. In Busan, retired grandfather Nam Hyun-woo was playing with his grandchildren in the park when he suddenly stood up and looked at the sky. "It's time," he said quietly. His granddaughter tugged at his sleeve. "Time for what, grandfather?" Hyun-woo smiled down at her. "Time for Grandpa to go to work." Around the world, millions of humans were having the same moment. The oldest awakened humans, those whose genetic memories reached back the furthest, were being called to lead the final battle. Lim Soo-jin, the former kindergarten teacher who had become humanity's primary diplomat, stood before the assembled Galactic Council one last time. Behind her, holographic displays showed the approaching enemy. Hundreds of Devourers, each one capable of consuming an entire solar system. "Members of the Council," she said, "the time for speeches is over. You have a choice to make. Fight with us or run and hope they don't find you." Council Prime Zephys stepped forward. "The Galactic Council stands with humanity. What do you need from us?" "Everything," Soo-jin replied simply. "Every ship, every weapon, every life that's willing to fight. Because if we lose this battle, there won't be another chance." In Seoul, street artist Oh Kyung-min was painting murals on the sides of buildings when the images began flowing through his mind. Not images from his own experience, but designs from the ancient war. Ship configurations that could channel psychic energy. Weapon arrays that could fire thoughts instead of energy beams. He painted frantically, and as he painted, engineers and scientists gathered to study his work. The designs were impossible by conventional physics, but they made perfect sense to awakened human minds. "Can we build this?" someone asked. Kyung-min nodded without stopping his work. "We've built them before, we can build them again, but we'll need help from our new friends." Across the galaxy, the greatest construction project in history began. Human designs combined with alien manufacturing capabilities. Crystalline ships that could amplify psychic energy. Weapons that fired concentrated will instead of plasma. Most importantly, massive generators that could connect the minds of billions of beings across dozens of species. The plan was audacious beyond belief. The Devourers fed on life force, growing stronger with every world they consumed. But they had one weakness that humanity had discovered in the ancient war. They couldn't understand concepts that didn't exist in their reality. Hope, love, sacrifice, determination. These ideas were literally incomprehensible to them. "We're going to hit them with everything we are," Nam Hyun-woo explained to his assembled fleet commanders. "Not just our weapons, but our dreams. Our refusal to give up. Our love for each other and for life itself." He stood on the bridge of the flagship, a vessel that looked more like a crystal cathedral than a warship. Around him, the combined fleets of 100 species waited for orders. 10 million ships in total, the largest armada ever assembled. But everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. The Devourers had destroyed entire galactic clusters. They had consumed civilizations that were millions of years older than any species in the Milky Way. "Grandfather," his aide asked quietly, "do you really think we can win?" Hyun-woo looked out at the stars where dark shapes were already blotting out the light from distant suns. "I think we can try," he said, "and sometimes that's all it takes." The first Devourer entered the galaxy near the rim world of Tarkus 7th. It was smaller than most, only the size of Earth's moon, but it consumed the entire system in minutes. Planets, moons, even the star itself were absorbed into its writhing mass. But as it fed, something unexpected happened. The psychic generators that Oh Kyung-min had designed activated across the galaxy. Billions of minds suddenly connected, sharing their thoughts and emotions across impossible distances. The Devourer felt the connection and recoiled. For the first time in its existence, it experienced something it couldn't consume. Hope. Not hope for victory, but hope itself as a pure concept. The idea that tomorrow could be better than today, even in the face of absolute destruction. The creature writhed in confusion and pain, trying to process an emotion that simply couldn't exist in its reality. While it was distracted, the human fleet struck. The battle was unlike anything that had ever happened in the universe. Physical weapons struck the Devourers' bodies while psychic attacks targeted their minds. Human ships dove into impossible close-range attacks, their crews singing ancient songs of defiance as they died. But for every small victory, there were terrible losses. Entire species were wiped out in seconds. Worlds that had existed for billions of years vanished without a trace. In the thick of the battle, Lim Soo-jin stood in the psychic command center, her mind connected to every living being in the galaxy. She could feel their fear, their pain, their dying hopes, but she could also feel something else. "They're learning," she reported to the fleet commanders. "The Devourers are adapting to our attacks. They're starting to understand our emotions." It was the nightmare scenario. If the Devourers could comprehend human feelings, they could consume them just like everything else. But Nam Hyun-woo had one final card to play. A strategy so desperate that it had never been tried before. "All ships," he broadcast, "prepare for the final gambit. We're going to show them something they've never seen before." "What's that?" someone asked. The old grandfather smiled. "We're going to show them what it means to choose love over fear, even when we know we're going to lose." The order went out across the galaxy. Every human ship, every alien vessel, every fighter and transport and civilian craft, all began flying, directly at the Devourers. Not in attack formations, but in patterns that spelled out messages in the ancient human language. Messages of love, of hope, of forgiveness, of the absolute refusal to hate, even in the face of annihilation. The Devourers tried to consume these emotions as they had consumed everything else, but they couldn't, because the feelings weren't directed at survival or victory. They were directed at the Devourers themselves. Humanity was offering love to the very creatures that were destroying them. It was impossible. It was illogical. It was completely insane by any rational standard. It worked. The Devourers stopped feeding. For the first time in their existence, they encountered something they couldn't consume because consuming it would mean becoming something they weren't. They would have to become capable of love themselves. One by one, the massive creatures began to retreat, not in defeat, but in confusion. They fled back to the spaces between galaxies, unable to process what they had experienced. The battle was over. The galaxy was saved, but the victory had come at a terrible cost. Billions were dead. Entire civilizations had been wiped out. Whole sectors of space were empty of life. In the aftermath, as the survivors counted their losses, someone asked Lim Soo-jin the question that was on everyone's mind. Will they come back? She looked out at the stars, many of which were still, dark from the Devourer's touch. I don't know, she said honestly, but if they do, we'll be ready, because now we know something we didn't know before. What's that? The greatest weapon in the universe isn't hate or fear or even determination. It's the willingness to love your enemies, even when they're trying to destroy you. The galaxy began to rebuild. Humans took their place as the guardians they had always been meant to be, not as conquerors or rulers, but as protectors, teachers, friends. And in the deep places between the stars, the Devourers drifted in confusion, carrying within their alien minds the impossible memory of being offered love by the very beings they had tried to consume. It would take them millennia to understand what had happened, but when they finally did, they would return to the galaxy, not as enemies, but as children seeking to learn what love meant. For now, though, the galaxy was safe, and on a small blue world orbiting a yellow star, children played in parks while their grandfathers watched the sky and smiled, knowing that sometimes the impossible was exactly what the universe needed. Nam Hyun-woo sat on his porch, watching his grandchildren play. They were fully awakened now, carrying the memories of warriors and guardians, but they were still children, still innocent, still capable of seeing wonder in the simplest things. Will there be more wars, grandfather? His granddaughter asked. Hyun-woo considered the question seriously. Probably, he said, but we'll face them together. All of us. And we'll remember what we learned today. What's that? That the best way to defeat your enemies is to make them your friends. It just takes a little patience. Above them, the stars shone peacefully in the night sky, and for the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy was truly at rest.